Hi there, my name's Bex and I'm going to talk to you today about nutrition and how to optimise your health and well-being through the foods that you eat. So I know that there can be quite a lot of conflicting advice out there when it comes to healthy eating and what we should be doing. So I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to strip that back for you a little bit and get rid of some of the confusion. So we'll talk a bit about nutrition and I'll share a bit about my journey. And then we'll talk a bit more about some healthy snacks ideas that you can make at home. And I'll do a couple of demonstrations as well so that you can recreate things in your own time. So my relationship with food hasn't always been a healthy one. For years, I found myself on restrictive diets, trying all these different things like Weight Watchers and Slimming World, and things that weren't actually optimizing my health. They were actually just creating tension in my mind and a really unhealthy relationship with food that often led to overeating, binge eating, and my weight was all over the place, my health was all over the place. So I've learned from that, and I'm sure that many people will resonate. I know that relationship with food is quite a complex subject for many people. So around 5 years ago, I discovered a plant-based diet, and that radically changed my health and my life, really. I found that my physical health improved, I was sleeping better, my mental health definitely improved, and I just became more compassionate in general towards myself and towards other people and towards the planet in general. So since then, I've been on a bit of a journey with food. I've been studying biomedicine, how the body works, and plant-based nutrition for a few years now. And I wanted to share with you a big piece of advice, which has been a hard learning curve for me. That, no matter what we choose to eat, no matter how much nutrition we're putting into our body, if we're stressed or if we're not enjoying that food, if we're not getting pleasure from it, then we're not going to be able to absorb the nutrients that we need from that food. So regardless of what nutrition you take in, if you've got a stressful, negative relationship with food, you're going to be blocking the absorption of those really key nutrients that keep us healthy. So you may have heard of the relationship between the gut and the brain. That's something that's being explored more and more, and there's a lot of research coming out about that at the moment. It's basically the concept that when we're stressed, when our mind is distracted or we're anxious, then it's going to have a negative impact on our gut. And you may have felt that yourself. If you've been anxious or stressed, you might find that you've got a funny tummy or that you're perhaps constipated and not able to go to the toilet. And it works the other way around as well. So there is something called the gut-brain axis, which runs from your brain all the way down to your intestinal tract. And they speak to each other all of the time. They're always in communication. So I can't stress enough how important it is to manage your stress levels and look after your mental health as much as possible. But of course, good nutrition does come into it, so we will go into that. The gut is really the kind of key to health. So if you've got a healthy gut, you're on the right track for health. And there's many ways we can optimize that. But one thing I wanted to say is that when we take in toxic foods, you have to remember that the gut is like a protective barrier between the outside world and your inside organs. So normally what happens is we will absorb nutrients through a sort of semi-permeable lining in the gut. But when we eat toxic foods or when we take in toxins of any kind, they start to create little tears in the gut lining, and then bigger food particles find their way into the system. And what happens when that happens is that your immune system doesn't recognize these big pieces of food that are getting through. So it starts to make antibodies to protect the body from these pathogens, from what it thinks is a danger to your body. And that's how food sensitivities begin. So for example, if your gut lets in a big piece of tomato and your immune system creates a response to that, it's perhaps going to create a food sensitivity around tomatoes, because every time you then eat one, your body will go, oh, it's that dangerous pathogen again. So it is really important to look after your gut health, because, you know, once that happens, it's a lot of stress for the body. You're putting your immune system under a lot of pressure, and that's going to cause inflammation, which can manifest in a number of different ways, like, you know, achy joints, skin issues, eczema, any sort of mental health issues, anything really. You know, inflammation is the root cause of all disease. So we want to be minimizing that as much as possible through the foods that we're eating. So I'll go through my sort of top 5 principles for healthy eating now, and then we'll move on to our healthy snacks element. Okay, so number 1 in my top 5 tips for healthy nutrition is to eat real food. So what does that mean? That means limiting processed food as much as possible. So anything that comes in a packet is likely to have a number of ingredients in there that probably didn't exist 100 years ago. And I think it's easy to forget that we are part of nature, and it has taken nature 2 million years to create the astounding machinery that our bodies are. So our bodies are used to eating natural foods from the earth, mostly plants, with, you know, processed foods weren't around even 100 years ago. So how can we expect our bodies to understand what they are when we've been, you know, designed for food that is real from nature? So keep it simple. Just help your digestive system out by picking real foods, and try and limit your meat consumption as much as possible. If you are going to eat meat, then choose organic sources, like sources that you know are trustworthy. Because otherwise, you know, if you're eating factory farm meat, you are probably going to be consuming hormones from the animal that have been injected into it to help it grow. So obviously that's going to wreak havoc in the body. So just make sure you're getting a good quality source. Meat's really, really difficult for our intestines to digest. When you think back to our ancestors, it wasn't really typical for them to be eating meat on a day-to-day basis. You know, it would only be when they could get hold of it. So for us, you know, just limiting it to maybe once or twice a week is probably the best thing for your intestines, and making sure you're getting lots of that kind of fermentable plant fibre to be able to push down the food through your system and make sure that you're able to expel toxins. So yeah, keep it simple. And whilst on the subject of meat, I guess I just want to dispel any myths around protein and calcium. I know there's a concern that when you're on a vegetarian diet that you're not able to get those key nutrients, but animals get their sources of protein and calcium from plants anyway. So really, by eating plants, we are just cutting out the middleman. The only nutrient that you can't get on a plant-based diet, or you can get, but it's harder to get, is vitamin B12. But to be honest, most people, even meat eaters, are quite deficient in that anyway, and we should probably all supplement with it, because B12 is found in the soil, and our soil is rather depleted nowadays because of all of the pesticide use and the way that we've been treating the land. So otherwise, you can get everything that you need from a plant-based diet. So how do we do that? Number 2 on my list of tips is to eat variety. So you want to be eating a really varied diet, making sure that you're getting lots of different phytonutrients from different plants, plant sources. So the way that I tend to do that, the best way that I find to make sure that I'm getting everything that I need, is to create Buddha bowls. And within my Buddha bowl, I would have perhaps some grains like rice, whole grain rice or quinoa, with some plant-based sources of protein, maybe some beans or lentils or hummus that I've made, or some nuts and seeds, and then some greens. I tend to try to include greens in every meal if possible, because they are just so good for us, you know, every type of green. And then lots of different coloured vegetables. So the idea is that you want your plate to look like a rainbow. And there are plenty of ways to make that taste absolutely divine, with really nice dressings and things that you can make using really tasty ingredients. It's also a really good idea if you can to try and get some fermented foods in your diet. We've talked about gut health and how important that is for overall health. And you can get some really good fermented foods like sauerkraut or kimchi. And of course, you can get really healthy bacteria as well in things like yogurt, as long as you're getting kind of unrefined. Yeo Valley is a really good one actually for that. You know, it's organic and they don't have any other ingredients. It's just pure yogurt, so they're really great. And yeah, if you're not used to eating in this way, I guess I just want to say, you know, don't try and do it all at once. If you're going to find that too much and you're just going to bounce back, it's nice to kind of just include these tips just a little bit more slowly. So maybe you might want to just make sure that you're having a bit of extra salad with each meal to start with, and then starting to reduce your meat consumption. You know, just take it step by step. It takes around 3 weeks for our taste buds to change. So if you're used to having quite a lot of processed food in there, or, you know, sugars and things, if you can go 3 weeks and cut those things out for 3 weeks, your taste buds are going to be way more refined to the beautiful taste of plant food, of vegetables and fruit. You're going to be able to taste the sweetness and the sugar and the saltiness in those foods much better. So it only takes around 3 weeks. So that's another piece of advice. And then number 3 is to eat in moderation. And what you will find if you're eating in this way, if you're eating lots of plant fibre and plant protein and vegetables, these things will fill you up for longer anyway. So you will be less likely to reach for sugary treats or unhealthy fats, you know, all of these things that we associate with bad health. So eating in moderation will come easier if you choose to eat in this way. But it's just to be mindful of, you know, when you're creating portion sizes just making sure that the portion sizes are reasonable and not overeating, because it can be quite a lot of stress on the digestive system. You know, it uses a lot of our energy, and to maximize our energy for our brains and things, we need to just make sure that we're not over consuming. And then number 4, we've talked about this a bit already at the beginning, but eating well is very much as much around how we eat as what we eat. So if we're distracted, our attention's somewhere else, we're not focused, then the mind and body are going to be really split. So if we're eating something and we're thinking about something else, it's going to take away from that process of digestion. So just remembering where possible to eat mindfully. And I know it's difficult because we all have such busy lives and we're all running around all the time. But if you can just make the time to sit down and really think about your food as you're eating it and place your attention there, that's going to really, really help with the absorption of those key nutrients. And number 5, this is to eat with your intuition. You know, listen to your intuition. No one knows your body like you do. I would put your intuition before that of experts. Everyone's body is, you know, completely different. We're all made up differently. So take back your power, you know, empower yourself with a diet that's truly uniquely yours, that works for you. Listen to your cravings. If you're craving sugary things, there are ways to manage that without having to reach for refined sugars or unhealthy snacks. You know, we're going to talk about that a bit in a minute as well. You know, different ways to satisfy those cravings. So yeah, if you can eat in these ways around 80% of the time, your body has the resilience to recover the other 20%. So obviously, I know it's difficult, and I know I've been through phases where it's just been really difficult to eat well. And I think one of the biggest lessons, especially for me, is to let go of some of that perfectionism as well, because, you know, we're all doing the best that we can. No one's perfect. Everyone is on their own journey, and it's just taking those steps in the right direction towards a healthy diet. We're either moving towards health or we're moving away from it, and we really have the power to be able to steer that through the foods that we choose to eat. Okay, so when it comes to snacking, there's quite a lot of controversy around whether it's actually good for you to snack or not. I know for me, like I think it's different for everyone. I think you have to really listen to your body, but I know that for me, if I need to eat food little and often, because otherwise I just go into that sort of fight or flight state, like my body feels quite stressed if I don't. And I know that a lot of people get a crash in the afternoons. So I'm going to talk about some suggestions for healthy snacks that aren't going to cause your blood sugar to just shoot up and create stress for the body. But yeah, what I would advise is actually if you can push through the morning, you know, if you can go from breakfast to lunch without snacking, that's advisable. Although if you do need to have a snack mid-morning, I would suggest having some fruit. Fruit is actually better to be eaten before meals rather than after it, because it doesn't take very long to digest at all. It only takes around 20 minutes. So if we're having a big heavy meal with lots of protein and starches and fibres, which takes maybe like 2 to 4 hours to digest, and we're just eating fruit that's going to sit on top of it, it's just going to cause fermentable acid in the stomach, which is obviously not going to be good. We might get acid reflux or whatever. So it'd be best to eat fruit before a meal if you're going to snack on fruit, or leave it 2 hours after your lunch to have something. So after lunch, mid-afternoon, I tend to have either fruit or maybe a handful of berries or nuts and seeds. You can toast your own you can toast sesame seeds, but they won't be very fulfilling. You can toast your own pumpkin seeds or sunflower seeds and things like that in advance, and just make a little jar of them. That just helps to bring out the flavour. Put a bit of salt on them. Nuts, same thing. You can toast them to bring out the flavour. And then other things like dips are great. I mean, hummus is the obvious one, isn't it? But you can make so many different types of hummus with other things, like other types of beans. You could use kidney beans or black beans and make sort of mash with them. I'm going to be doing a couple of demos soon. So I'm going to show you a really nice peanut dip, which is very indulgent. You're using peanut butter and tahini, and some really nice flavours, which is great to have with like crudites, you know, like slices of celery or cucumber. Even apple tastes really good with it. So I'll show you that in a bit. A few other things, bliss balls, they're one of my favourite go-tos. So that's like a combination, you've probably seen them around, combination of dates and nuts and seeds and healthy fats and things, all blended into a little ball, which is a really tasty sweet treat. You can have things like coconut yogurt or dairy yogurt if you're choosing unrefined versions. You could make a smoothie. You could roast up some vegetables, make some sort of roasted sweet potato fries without too much oil on them, and then just help yourself to those all week. I'm just thinking if there's anything else. All right, let's get going. Right, so I'm going to make some really high protein chickpea snacks that you can just have in the afternoon, or you can add them to butter bowls or salads. So we're starting with a tin of chickpeas, and I've just drained them in a colander and removed any of the excess skin. Sometimes the skins come off. It can help to remove them. It just helps to make them crispier when we're cooking them. And I've just patted them dry as well. And then I've got a few spices. So I'm going with some paprika and some cumin. And I'm going to put a pinch of cayenne pepper in there as well. And we've also got some sea salt, some unrefined sea salt as well. You can use any spices for this. They're really nice with turmeric and black pepper, or maybe a bit of curry powder. Basically what you've got in and what you like, what your preference is. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to use some unrefined coconut oil. I'm just going to heat a little bit of it up in the pan, probably a teaspoon-ish. We'll see how we get on with that in a non-stick frying pan. The reason why I'm using coconut oil is because it's the most stable when cooked. So if you're using other types of oils, it can be quite inflammatory for the body. Coconut oil is the least inflammatory, and there's lots of other benefits to coconut oil as well. So it's the best one to use for frying. These are the chickpeas now. They've got the paprika and the cumin on them and a little bit of coconut oil. And we're just going to fry them for around 15 minutes or so. And at the end, we'll add the salt and some lemon juice as well, just for a nice bit of freshness. Here they are, the finished product. It only took around 10 minutes in the end, and I've just sprinkled some extra paprika and cumin on with some sea salt at the end of cooking, and then squeezed over some lemon juice just to add some freshness. So you can just have them as a snack on their own. You can keep them in a little jar, or I quite like having them like this in lettuce leaves, just to add some extra green to my day. So I hope you enjoy making these at home. You can also do something similar with nuts and seeds. Just toast them up with little bit of coconut oil in some spices of choice and a bit of sea salt. And you can add a little bit of maple syrup as well, just for a bit of sweet kick. All right. Okay, I'm going to show you a really easy dip, which is made from peanut butter, tahini, and tamari and maple syrup and some fresh lemon juice. It's really nice in a salad, as a dressing, or on top of a Buddha bowl, or you can just have it as a snack in the afternoon with some crudités. So I've just chopped up some fresh cucumber, celery and organic carrot. So, peanut butter. I always buy this brand because it's got 100% peanuts in it. Peanut butter is one of those things that can either be really, really nourishing for you or really, really bad for you. You have to check the ingredients. It's like with anything, you know, if it's 100% of what it says it is, then that's perfect. If it's got lots of additives in it, then it's going to be have a bit of a negative impact on you. So peanut butter, and same with tahini. So tahini, if you don't know, is sesame seed paste. So it's very much made in the same way as peanut butter, just by grounding down sesame seeds. It's a brilliant source of calcium, and yeah, actually it's got more calcium in it than dairy milk, and really good source of unsaturated fat. It's often used in hummus. That's what makes hummus really, really creamy. So it's a great addition to this as well. And I've also got some tamari. Tamari is basically soy sauce. It's just a slightly more protein-rich version, and it's less likely to have additives in it. So it's always gluten-free, which is always really helpful. So if you can find tamari, then that's your best bet. But if not, then soy sauce works just as fine. And maple syrup. So maple syrup is my favourite natural sweetener. It's made from the maple tree. It's very expensive, so I often just get a bottle, and it does last quite a long time, so I just use it mindfully. It's really good for you as long as you are consuming it in smaller quantities, so you don't want to be, you know, eating tons of it, but it's not as bad for you as eating refined sugar. It's got a lot more nutrients in it because it's from the plant. So yeah, and then some lemon. So lemon is obviously really cleansing for the body as well. So that's going to make a really nice sort of sweet / salty dip. So we want the balance of the flavours there. So we're going to start with 2 tablespoons of peanut butter. This is smooth peanut butter, which works better for dips. Okay. And 2 tablespoons of tahini. And then we've got tamari going in, just 1 tablespoon. So that's going to give a really nice salty flavour. And then we're going to balance the salt with some maple syrup, which is the sweet. So around a tablespoon. Amazing. And then I'm just going to squeeze juice from 1 lemon in there. These are quite big lemons, so perhaps not all of this. I'll have to pick the seeds out afterwards. So that's just going to give it a really nice freshness, and yeah, mix it up. It will look like it's not coming together to start with, so it will look a bit curdly, but just keep going, and then we can add a little bit of water as well, just to thin it out a bit. So that's becoming really creamy now. I don't know if you can see that. I'm just going to add a little bit of water. So you can see there, it's really nice, thick dip. You can water it down even more if you want to use it as a dressing. Really creamy, really delicious. And I'm gonna, just have it with some crudités. You can also, what's really nice is using it in a wrap, a bit like we did with the chickpeas. So I've got some nori seaweed here. Nori is a brilliant source of iodine. If you can get hold of these, they're brilliant. I've also got spring green leaves. These make really good wraps as well, just raw, lots of lovely green nutrients, and also some lettuce leaves there. So if you've got greens lying around or you've got nori sheets, then you can make just little snack wraps in the afternoon for while you're at work. And yeah, it's a delicious snack. So good. Okay, I'm going to show you a really great alternative to having dessert in the afternoon. You've probably seen these before. These are chia seeds. They're all the range at the moment. You might have had chia pudding from Pret or from M&S or various supermarkets in the refrigerated section. So we're going to make our own today. I thought we would make 2 versions. It's super, super cheap to make at home, and it's quite simple as well. And this way you can control what's going into it and you're not buying any unnecessary plastic as well. So yeah, 2 versions. I thought we'd do a sort of plain one with vanilla and then also a chocolate flavoured one. We'll leave them to set. It takes a few hours in the fridge, or you can do it overnight, which is probably a better option if you're busy for work the next day. And then we'll top them with some fresh fruits. So I've got 3 tablespoons of chia seeds in each bowl. And I'm just going to add to the first one 125 ml, half a cup of milk, plant-based milk I'm using. So I'm using oat milk, but it's really nice with coconut milk. I'm just using oat milk because it's what I've got in. And then around a teaspoon of vanilla. I don't have a teaspoon, I've only got a tablespoon, but I'll have to guess. Yeah, about that much. And a little bit of maple syrup as well. I'd go for around half a tablespoon. It's just going to give it a little bit of a sweet edge. So having a bit of maple syrup in your snacks in the afternoon, it's really helpful for just reducing sugar cravings, because obviously you are getting the sweetness, but you're not taking in any refined sugars. So it just takes the edge off that craving in the afternoon. And then simple as this, we're just going to whisk it up. It feels like it's really runny at the moment, but what will happen is the chia seeds will merge with the milk, and it will form a sort of gelatinous texture, and it'll be really thick and creamy when you come to eating it. Perfect. So for the chocolate one, really similar, same amount of milk. And I'm using unrefined organic cacao powder. You can use cocoa. Cacao is slightly more nutritious because it hasn't been heated. Cocoa is just a more refined version of cacao. So if you can get hold of this, it's really good. It's really high in magnesium. Yeah, you obviously use it to make chocolate, but it doesn't have sugar in it, so it's perfect. So around a tablespoon. You can add more or less depending on what you prefer. And then same again, we're going to add a little drop of vanilla, around half a teaspoon. And I've got some cinnamon as well. I would put around half a teaspoon of that in as well. Just going to guess. And then I always like to add a little pinch of salt whenever I'm using cacao, because it really helps to bring that flavour out. Just a pinch. And again, maple syrup. You might want to add a little bit more than you did for the first one, just because cacao's quite rich, so it just helps to take the edge off. So we'll go with just under a tablespoon. And same again, just give it a good whisk. Yeah, looks like chocolate milk. Amazing. Okay, so they're just going to go in the fridge to set now. Sometimes I like to take them out halfway through, just give them a bit of a stir, make sure the chia seeds are well dispersed. And yeah, we'll come back to it and do our toppings in a minute. And here are the finished chia puddings. So this one on the left is the vanilla one, and I've just added some fresh blueberries. And then obviously we've got the chocolate one, and I just added some fresh banana at the top there. So if you were taking these to work, you could put them in a little jar, and then you would just take your fruit separately and add when you're ready to eat. Okay, so if you are lucky enough to have a food processor at home, like me, then you can make your own energy balls, power balls, truffles, bliss balls, whatever you want to call them. They're basically just a mixture of dates and dried fruits with nuts and seeds and superfood powders or spices, anything really that you've got in your store cupboard. There's no hard and fast rules about what goes in there. It's just very much playing around. They're like little power balls of nutrition with lots of healthy fats and protein and fibre in there. And they're going to help you to reduce your sugar craving in the afternoon, because you'll have the dried fruit for the sweetness as well. So I would roughly say around 50% dates and nuts to 50% dried fruit, and then whatever else you want to add in there as well. And I'm going to make some seedy ones today. So I've got some pumpkin seeds and sunflower seeds just toasted up. You don't have to toast them. That's just what I had in my store cupboard. So all I've done with them is just fry them in a kind of medium heat frying pan, just dry fried them, and it's just toasted them. So it just helps to bring out the flavour. And then the other 50% really is going to be dates and raisins. It can help sometimes to soak the dried fruit beforehand if it's quite dry, because otherwise the food processor might have a bit of a hard time breaking it down. These are all right though, I think, so I'm going to just give it a whirl without. I've also got some coconut and some chia seeds going in, some cacao powder, vanilla, and a pinch of sea salt as well, just to help bring out all of those flavours. So I'm going to whack it all in there. I'm going to put the ingredients list up for you in a minute so you can see. And yeah, you can hopefully recreate these at home. Here it all is in the food processor. I'm just going to put it on now. Right, this is it all blended up. So it takes a bit of time just to break down the oils in the nuts and seeds, and that's what's going to be helpful to making it stick together. So you can see now, if I press that together in my hand, we're going to get a sort of dough mixture. And then literally, it's just a case of making little balls out of these. So there we go. So you can make them any size you want. I usually go between 25 and 35 grams if I'm weighing them. But, you know, they're just little, almost like ping pong ball size, I would say. Or you can make them sort of golf ball size. But yeah, they're perfect for just an afternoon snack. All right, I hope that's been helpful. And yeah, feel free to just play around at home with whatever nuts and seeds you've got. So we're going to leave it there. I hope that that was useful. I'm guessing that perhaps some of it resonated with you and perhaps some of it didn't, and that's okay, that's all fine. What I would suggest doing now is perhaps taking 2 or 3 things from the talk that you would like to adopt going forward or that you found interesting, and maybe creating a couple of small actions from that. So something really achievable that you know that you will do. And yeah, I know it's a bit of a tricky time at the moment with everything that's going on in the world. Perhaps ingredients are slightly more hard to get hold of, or you might be super busy looking after 3 children and trying to homeschool at the same time. So eating habits might have slipped a little bit, but these are all tips and skills that you can take with you going forward. And now is a great time to re-establish those patterns and relationships with food, simply because we're at home a lot more and we've got to be more creative in the kitchen. So I am running a couple of online cooking classes over the next few weeks, which are focused around lockdown. So using up store cupboard ingredients and boosting your immune system naturally through food. And yeah, just being a bit more creative with preserving foods. So if you're interested in that, all the details are on my Facebook page, and you're very welcome to contact me if you've got any questions or if anything sparks any interest via email, or do take a look at my Instagram and website as well, because there's plenty of content on there. All right, I hope you all stay safe.